Debt for climate or debt for nature swaps are a way for a country to reduce its debt burden and shift funding towards environmental and/or climate goals. Debt swaps can take different forms depending on the creditor, debtor, and type of debt involved. Sometimes a third party is involved, such as an NGO. The swaps are undertaken with the condition that the country spends some of the money saved on environmental and/or climate-focused initiatives instead.
There's two types of debt for nature swaps, and one is a bilateral swap, which when I hear debt for nature swap, that's what I think is one country lending to another country, where the first country forgives that debt and they no longer have an obligation, and all of the money that they were paying back in interest and principal to the lending country, they use that money to finance their nature. Currently, what the new form, kind of the second round of these, is a commercial debt for nature swap, where we refinance Eurobonds that a country has, or we could also do commercial loans that a country has borrowed from the private sector.
Debt for nature swaps have been around for quite some time, since the 1980s. There have been a number of transactions, but they tend to be fairly small transactions. It has remained a fairly niche type of instrument, in part because of the costs associated with setting up the transactions and monitoring. Generally, swaps tend to be more useful for countries where debt is sustainable, but there's still limited fiscal space to meet this pressing climate and conservation needs.
Even if you bring in concessional financing, you're still increasing the debt to GDP ratio. And in our cases, we can either keep that even or in many cases reduce the debt to GDP ratio. So the conditions to achieve a debt for climate swap or a debt for nature swap, they're complex, but they're not that onerous. Really, what a country needs, which every country has, is ambitions to combat climate and protect nature. We've learned that it takes a long time to get the process involved, and I think the thing that takes the longest amount of time is getting the climate and nature commitments decided and agreed to, just because it's a lot of moving parts, it's a lot of science. The second part is there needs to be a lot of communication between those ministries, because this is also a new product for the ministries of finance. It's very complicated for the environmentalists and the climate people to understand the finance, and very complicated for the finance people to understand the science of the environmental. One solution that we have is that this usually escalates to the presidential level, so we try to do that as early as possible.
Hemos aprendido varias lecciones que pueden servir para otros, pero también han sido oportunidades de mejora en el tiempo. La primera es tener claro el para qué y dónde va a ser ejecutados los recursos. El segundo elemento clave es que se tienen que tener indicadores objetivos de qué se quiere lograr para tener un reporte certero. El tercero, cómo se van a ejecutar los recursos. Lo ideal es que estos recursos se puedan ejecutar a través de otras organizaciones, no necesariamente el administrador del canje de deuda, porque hay expertices diferenciados, ¿no? Un administrador tiene las expertices más fiduciarias, de seguimiento, monitoreo, tal vez comunicación. Y el cuarto tema es difusión. Hay que comunicar muy bien los resultados y los logros de estos canjes de deuda.
So the advice I would give to countries is to get the key ministries on the same page. And a lot of the times this comes from the presidential level, and that helps, but it should be known at the presidential level. So both sides understand, the ministries of finance understand what the Ministry of Environment is trying to achieve, or the Ministry of Climate, and the Ministry of Climate understands, the challenges of the Ministry of Finance.